just realized I didn't. I didn't think enough I should color in the teeth or not. I know teeth, they're animals, so it's usually not white. I'll actually give that some thought. I'll come back to it. The next lightest color we're going to do is just right in that gum line. Get out my pencils. And I do have pink. However, I kind of want to use not pink rose. Use Deco Peach. This one doesn't really look like it, but it is more of a it is more of a kind of a pink color that I've been looking for. The actual pink itself is really dark, but let's actually use both of them. Oh, and before I forget, I'm curious how much of the white pencil that I used for the background. So, this is Prussian green. This is Prussian green. This is a new pencil. I just bought it. I think I tested it out, and it hasn't been used yet. And then when I started out, the white was just as long. So about that much pencil gets used just for like a background like this, which is something I never really was aware of. I just kind of colored the area and then moved on. I actually thought it'd be more. That's actually kind of nice to know because these pencils are not cheap. So take a test page here. So this is pink. As you can see, it's a very stark pink. And then Deco Peach. Actually, it's more of a, that's more of a peach color. Maybe I was thinking of a different pink. I was thinking of Deco Pink, not Deco Peach. Let's gander at this. There we go, yes. This is the gum line color I want. You can't, it's a little hard to see. Just a little bit of a test. That's in there. I'm just thinking like a gum line. What kind of color is gum line going to represent? You can't always tell from the pencil itself. So that's pink, and that's a little just too pink for me, and that's peach. And if I hadn't tested it, if I had just gone directly to the gum line, I would have just seen right away like that's not what I wanted, and that's why I do a test page. So that's Deco Pink, and that is what I'm going to use for the direwolf's gum line. Literally just barely touching that area. There we go. That's it. That's all the pink that's going to be in this drawing. And I'm going to wipe that down with a little bit of cotton. That's all I'm doing. I'm not even going to like wipe it. I'm just going to like slowly just press it over it and then just rotate the cotton. You can't really see it, but there's a little bit of pink dust that is getting on the direwolf's mouth. And as I looking at this again, you can see that it wasn't completely colored in, so just give it one more pass. Press a little bit harder. Really make sure that sticks to the gum line. Alrighty. Now it is time for us to choose what gray we want. So basically everything from here is what I have in terms of colored pencil. And so it's white. I want to have something that's going to contrast to the white, but something that, but not so light that it kind of blends in. So we have, these are warm grays. Like these are the cool grays, and these are the French grays. 70% cool might be a little too dark for my liking, but I'm going to try that anyway. I'm also going to try 50% warm gray just to see contrast. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to explain what makes a warm, like the difference between warm and cool gray. And yeah, cool gray just seems like there's more blue in it than there is for the warm gray. I'll do a 30% French gray just to kind of get a look at it, and then let's try. It's like 20% cool, and then 30%. So I have like 5 different colors. It's gray. There's a lot to choose from. So I'm gonna something like this. There's no harm in testing colors. You just don't want to commit to something right away and then find out this instantly, like, oh, I didn't like this. So let's turn it to the side. So I'm gonna just do a big, all I'm doing is just literally putting the color to the page. I'm going to mark down, this is 30 cool gray. This is another cool gray. Yeah, the gradient difference between this one and this one is 10%. This is 20% cool gray, so it's almost the same, but little different. It's a little bit lighter, so it might be a little too cool gray. It might be a little too light for my liking. Now we have 30% French gray. As you can see, this is more of like a brown, and as soon as it hit the page, I realized like I am not going to color with that. So 30 French gray. So I'm going to do X next to that. Be like, nope. All right, warm gray. Actually, this is kind of this might actually contrast a little better with the white that's on the page. So this is 50% warm gray. Might be a little too dark for warm. And then 70. This is 70% cool gray. My gut is telling me not to go with this one, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be a cool gray. Now I just have to make the decision about which one to use. Actually, any more cool gray in here? One gray. Actually, those are the only cool gray colors I have for now. So, anything in my drawer? 20% cool gray, and I have pencils all over. So it looks like it's between 30% cool gray, 20% cool gray, and 70%. Now if we take the actual drawing, and kind of look at what we're working with. I think 70% is going to show up a little better. Let's actually test it out and see how it looks next to the detail I put. So let's see how it looks next to the detail I put into the direwolf. I'm just going to do a couple. And if it's too dark, I'm probably going to skip it and do something else. This is 70% cool gray. Oh. Oops. So basically what I just did was I just did a couple of little spikes, and I just wanted to color them in, see how they show up, and they kind of disappear against the cool gray. Yeah, it's kind of hard. It doesn't show up very well. So with that in mind, I'm going to go with, if you can see it. So basically it was supposed to be, it's supposed to be like the kind of fur detail, but it kind of hides in that 70%. So we're going to go with 30% cool gray. And I'm just going to do this so that the eye doesn't get any like gray bits in there. It's going to protect that as well. Give it a wipe. I think I'll use this 70% cool gray on the snout. Well, technically I think that's the snout and that's the nose. All right, 30% cool gray. We are coloring the direwolf. There we go, nice and sharp. And because it is sharp, we are going to start with the little details. Start in the corner, pull the pencil out. Start in the corner, draw it out. I think there was one banner I did where there was a bunch of tiny skulls, and they had teeth. They all rows of teeth. I think that was the only time I ever just said screw it and colored over the ink lines. The reason I did that was because I started coloring the individual teeth, and they were so tiny that I was like, it doesn't matter, I'm just gonna color over it. That was the one. So in 400 plus banners, that was the one time I would say I compromised on one of my rules about not coloring over the ink line. That was also in the middle of the project too, and I think I was just wanted to keep moving on. Can't remember the name of it. It was like a there's a night called the Night of Skulls and Kisses, and that was I think the banner, because it had like a yellow skull and red lips, and it was in a weird, I think it was like in 6 different quadrants the banner was divided into, and so there was like a multitude of lips that I was coloring, and just a ton of yellow skulls on black. And as cool as it looked, it was a time-consuming pain to draw, and even more time-consuming pain to color in. I said, you know what, whatever, this one is just, and it, you could tell the yellow had color over the teeth line, but didn't really matter in the long run. And these all kind of, once all the banners are put together like on the wall, everything's kind of the one giant piece instead of individual ones. And so when it's up on, so when the Skull and Kisses was up on the wall, you didn't really, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm the only one who's going to know about that. I think that's true with a lot of artists, is like they're aware of some little teeny tiny maybe shortcut or shortfall or compromise they made, and they're aware of it, and they think like, oh, it's there, it's exposed for everyone to see, they're going to know about it. But they don't, or if they do, they just don't care. I think if you do good work, people more want to celebrate your successes than really point out your failures. But if you're clearly trying to hide some failure in front of someone, it's kind of hard. It's a little harder to do. So now, as the pencil is getting more dull, I'm going to just color in the denser areas. And I'm going to go basically from left to right. I'm going to try to go down and keep it so my hand doesn't smudge any of the pencil. And right now, I think I'm feeling good about my decision to go with 30% Cool Grey. I think the direwolf's looking good. A lot of my decisions about colors are primarily based on emotion. So when I do, so a lot of times I can see, like when I did this, the test colors, I could tell like French gray as soon as I put it to the page. I'm like, this is not gonna look good against. I'm like, this is not gonna look good. And I've already done a direwolf that was French gray, and I didn't like how it looked. So I was like, I'll try it again. So I put down some French gray, and I was like, yep, not what I want. Get it nice and sharp again. A couple licks to the detail. Look at the razor. It's a little dusty. Get the ear. Along that ear. Doing this detail work kind of reminds me of trying to have a conversation in the car while driving. And doing detail work is kind of like it's like driving, downtown and trying to find your next turn and get in the right lane. It's like I just need to focus on what I'm doing right now. And then doing like the, you know, solid areas is like being on the highway. All you're doing, you can just kind of zone out a little bit, just a little bit, not completely, but you can actually zone out enough where you can have a conversation with someone. So if I'm going stretches of time without saying anything, I'm just in that zone. Oh yeah, look at that head. Look at that direwolf head. That looks pretty good, in my opinion. Kind of losing its points, so we're gonna just do some fill in some areas. I'm just kind of filling in the areas around the details. There's some colors where you really have to be careful, because if you use, I know bronze is very temperamental like this. If you use bronze and you press down, like if you press down too hard in kind of big open areas and then try to color in smaller areas, it has like a weird contrast where the colors, the same color almost doesn't match. It almost doesn't match itself. And so with that one, I had learned to just, when I would color in, I just like do it very lightly everywhere, and then slowly kind of fill it in to make it uniform. Bronze is definitely not one of my favorite colors to use, so I use that a little sparingly. I think that's probably why I said that different pencils almost have different personalities, just because some of them I like better than some of them I just like better than others. Some of them are easy to work with, some of them are difficult. Electric blue is probably one of my least favorite colors to work with in Prismacolor's entire catalog. That one, it just has like, I try to get best way I can describe it is the blue almost has like a marbled pattern to it when you get done, and if that's something you're going for, it can work, but everything I was trying to do was I wanted it to just be a solid color, so it didn't suit my purposes. And the banners that do have electric blue for a color, I'm not pleased with when I see them. But my favorite colors to use for Prismacolor, my absolute favorite, is Canary Yellow. Canary Yellow is the most reliable color that they have. After that, in terms of brown, I really love Sienna Brown. That one also has just a very, both of them, Canary Yellow and Sienna Brown, have just like it's one solid color. It's easy to work with. Neither of them have ever really given me any problems. And I've kind of used both of them to the point where I almost overused them. I had yellow. I had to kind of go and really. I actually discovered. For a while I thought canary yellow was the only yellow they had, but I was very, very wrong. There's deco yellow and lemon yellow, and different kind of like darker, kind of like orangish yellows. And so I started switching it up because I noticed like I was using canary yellow a lot for a lot of different banners, and yellows are actually a pretty common color in heraldry, in Westeros heraldry. In terms of field background, in like this area, black is the most common, followed by white, and I believe yellow is the third most common. And when you have the third most common color is yellow, and you use the same colored pencil for all those yellows, a lot of the banners start to, they all just kind of started to, that color just was way more noticeable. So I'm like, alright, I should use different yellow. I think most of like the main, kind of like rainbow colors or primary colors that you're using. So reds are pretty good to use. Blue has some good ones. True blue is probably like the best blue color, but like there's some more temperamental ones for blue. Nice sharp point. I'm gonna get those details in there. There are some banners that if I were to do videos of them, I'd have to do them over multiple days. I think the most time-consuming one I ever did was House Ambrose of the Reach, and it was just probably over 100 like ants that I drew on the page, and the red ants on a yellow background, and I used canary yellow, and the end result was amazing. But the way I described it was that one took me three Mel Brooks movies and 4 Breaking Bad episodes to finish. So that one would be 3.5. That was probably like 8 hours. That was probably 8 hours of work. I think it took me like 2 or 3 separate days to do that one. Kind of starting to feel it a little bit. After I'm done with this, I'll probably go for a walk, just because it's super nice out right now. And I've been sitting for a long time. But I hope you are enjoying watching the coloring. Hope you're enjoying any of my anecdotes that I'm sharing, or any advice about coloring or artwork. Originally I wanted to do a blog about the banners for Westeros, but I quickly realized that as I started doing it, that it's not 2002 anymore, and that blogs are deader than blogs. I think seem like deader than dinosaurs. Well, I shouldn't say that they're deader than dinosaurs. I know people do have blogs out there, like George R. R. Martin has a blog, but he's also a best-selling author, so he has a captive audience, and so that allows him to blog with, and actually be able to share things. But I think if you're just kind of getting into things now in 2020, blogging, just straight up blogging, is probably just kind of, it just seemed like it's like I was feeding stuff into a black hole. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of like little fun facts about the different houses and different banners. I don't really have a lot of fascinating stuff about the Stark family. They weren't the most interesting family to me in the books, to be honest. I thought Jon was like the most interesting character from that family. The family itself was, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of tidbits that I kind of really glommed onto. Actually, I'm gonna, before I sharpen it, I'm gonna wear the pencil down a little bit more. I will say, I do know that the last the last Stark who styled himself as King of the North was Torrhen Stark. And Torrhen Stark was a contemporary of Aegon the Conqueror, so he existed about 300 years before he was king 300 years before the events of Game of Thrones. And he brought his host south, and he met Targaryen. They met Targaryen, Aegon Targaryen, on the Trident. And he knew about the reports of the Field of Fire that had wiped out a large number of just people from the Reach, but also completely extinguished the Gardner family, who is actually probably the most important family in Westeros that is not mentioned in the show at all. They actually have kind of more of an interesting history than the Starks, I feel. Of course, I think most of the Stark history is just there, on screen as part of the TV show. Oops. Now you can see it, but the page, as I color it, the page gets a little. Zoom out so you can see a little better. So the page gets kind of curved as a result, and that's kind of as a result of handling it and coloring it. So that's why it slides off. The Field of Fire was one of I think it was early in the Aegon's campaign. He was basically demanding fealty from all the different, the King of the Westerlands, the King of the Reach, King of the Stormlands. It was early in his campaign. They brought the entire host of the Reach to meet Aegon, and they were all burned in the Field of Fire, which basically was this large wheat field where they met for battle. And Aegon just burned a lot of them, and I think there was a large number, almost every gardener was there that day. The king, his squire, all of his sons, everyone died from that house. And after that, the Tyrells, who'd never been kings of the Reach, swore fealty to House Targaryen, and they were made stewards or wardens of the West. And they live in Highgarden, which is actually the castle for the gardeners. Highgarden, gardeners. And reports of that got to Torrhen Stark before meeting the Targaryen host. And he's kind of a polarized. I think within Westeros history, Torrhen's kind of a polarizing figure. For some people, he was someone who saved. He was the king who knelt, kind of like the weak link in the chain. But I think for him, he just couldn't. He just knew that if he went in, he was gonna die, and he would be the last. Regardless of whether he knelt or not, I think he knew he was the last king of the North. He could see which way the wind was blowing, and he did that to not only save himself but save a large number of his own people. And so he ended up having to sacrifice his pride in order to save a lot of lives. But the North are a hardy people, and they were also proud, and so I think a lot of them didn't care for the fact that he knelt. But there are houses with Starks. There are several houses that have rivalries within other houses, like rivalries against each other. The Lannisters, the kind of troublemakers for them were the Rains and the Tarbecks, for whom the Rains of Castamere was written. That's the song that's playing during the Red Wedding, by the way. Do 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 do. That one. And for the troublemakers for the House Tully of the Riverlands was House Frey. He's also at the Red Wedding. And the Starks, their family that kind of gave them a lot of grief through centuries, is the Boltons. Now, between the Starks and the Boltons are a far more interesting family and far more macabre. In fact, one of my favorite details about the Boltons is their castle's named Dreadfort, and at Dreadfort, the sconces, the torch holders in the walls at Dreadfort are human skeleton hands holding the torches, and that was I don't know if they put that in the show or not. It's something they really should have made a point of showing, just because I thought it was such a great character description for that family, just because it describes them perfectly. They are twisted beyond all belief. I wouldn't be surprised if there was that family went nuts from a lot of inbreeding, being that far north and having that few people to breed with. So that's my theory about why they're a little more nuts than anyone else in the show. Although I think the family that has the most rumors about inbreeding is, I think it's Farwind is the name of the house, and it's a house from the Iron Islands. And they live on an island called Lonely Light. The interesting thing about Lonely Light is it is the furthest west Westeros settlement. It's the furthest known part of Westeros, and it's an 8 days sail from the Iron Islands. And it's a family that basically they don't communicate with a lot of people. They don't get off their island very much, and so even among the Ironborn, they're considered a little strange. if they live on a tiny island 8 days from anyone. I can't imagine what goes on there that would be... Can't imagine what would go on there that wouldn't be unsavory. I think they did show up for the King's Moot. And I think that was in they were selecting a king, or they were selecting a new leader for the Iron Islands. They did show up. And that was the only time anyone saw them. And yeah, I'm trying to think of like weird facts like that for the Stark family, but for the life of me, can't really think of anything off the top of my head. There was I think it was Cregan Stark was the other well-known, or like kind of the other historical Stark, head of the Stark household, and Warden of the North, and he existed during the Dance of the Dragons. The Dance of the Dragons is actually the civil war that erupted between two Targaryen households, and they that resulted in the bloodiest war that ever took place in Westeros. And what happened was the Northerners didn't come down to fight for a while because they had to harvest their crops. After all, winter's coming, so just like we got to take care of ours and our own. But once that happens, we'll come down. So they did eventually show up after the war had ended, and there was a period of chaos, and Cregan Stark basically stuck around for a month. I think it was a month after the war ended, and it was called the Hour of the Wolf, and he was basically in charge of Westeros for that time while things got settled. And they were ready to fight too. They came down, they were ready, they were charged up, warriors, all of them, and the war was over. And so decided to stick around and take care of some business. And the first order of business was discovering, well, I don't know, spoiler alert if you don't want to know how the war, the Dance of the Dragon ends, you can skip ahead probably 20 or 30 seconds. So basically, the war was between King Aegon II and his sister Rhaenyra, the realm's delight. The Queen Rhaenyra was fed to Aegon's dragon, and shortly after that, Aegon was poisoned because he became a pretty fantastic drunk. He was poisoned in his palanquin, and that's how the war ended. And when Cregan Stark came down, he basically made it his mission to find out who committed regicide, which is killing the king. He's like this. Somebody did this, even though it was, warranted. Whoever did it must be punished, and that ended up being Larry's Clubfoot. I think it was of How Strong. Larry's Clubfoot of How Strong. He was executed, and the other one was Corlys Velaryon, who is the Sea Snake, who is the most decorated admiral in Westeros history. And people liked him so much, I think he was imprisoned, or he was punished somehow, but they wanted to let him off, and he even confessed to it, saying I did it, but just so many people died, and it was just the madness had to end, were his exact words. So Cregan Stark demanded, I can't remember how he got punished, but once the matter of once that matter was wrapped up, Cregan Stark went back north and lived out the rest of his days, I believe. The host that came with him, I do know that there were so many soldiers, and there were so many widows and so many soldiers and that died, sons and husbands that died in the war, that what ended up happening was, I don't remember whose idea. It was some woman. It was a woman whose idea was like, hey, the Northerners, rather than going home to where there's no food, they should resettle the Riverlands and marry some of these widows that don't have any, husbands anymore to take care of them. So, Cregan Stark, it was actually a pretty, in terms of solving the idea of like, well, we don't want the North to starve, and we also need to rebuild the southern half of Westeros. So that was a pretty good compromise that was came up with. But he went back to the north with a much smaller host than he left with. The Starks are also descendants of the First Men. So they're the two main, basically it's like the easiest way to think of it is like the north is where the First Men the descendants of the First Men mostly live. And the south is mostly Andals, is where the Andals landed, and that's where they settled. Although there are some houses in the south that do claim descendants from the First Men. One of them being it's two houses. It's Bracken, and it's not Bracken, but it's the family that they fight with. I think it's Blackwood. I have to look it up, but they're I want to say it's Blackwood. Blackwood has a weirwood tree for their sigil. They actually have an ancient weirwood tree that's petrified, it's turned to stone, and every night the entire tree fills with, I think it's either ravens or I think it's ravens, fills with ravens, almost to the point where it looks like it's like black leaves. So that is one family that lives in the Westerlands. That's actually descended from the First Men. And if you keep watching my videos, you'll probably hear me talk a lot more about weird and random Game of Thrones facts. Because every time I would do a banner, if it was a house I'd never heard of before, I'd try to research them and kind of find out more about them. And I definitely learned a lot from this project, which is kind of why I enjoyed it so much. Alright, we are getting close to being done. Sweet. Especially after 2.5 hours. And it's probably going to be a few, like 5 half-hour videos, I think. Again, this is my first attempt at an ASMR video, so any comments you have about what you liked, what you wish I'd do a little differently. I went to school for writing, so I'm always open for helpful criticism, something that's just like, hey man, it's like, I want to hear more of this, maybe you need to shut up when this is happening, so forth. Just let me know in the comments section. Yeah, it's been, I've been sitting straight for 2.5 hours, but it's been, I've enjoyed it. I'd say 2.5 hours is actually a decent amount of time to take to do one banner. I'd say it's about average. The shortest banner I ever did was a white banner with 3 gold bendlets, which is just 3 horizontal. It's basically 3 like horizontal stripes across the corner, 3 gold horizontal stripes on white, 10 minutes to do. And when I first read the description for that one, I did it almost immediately just to get it over with. I don't remember the name of that house or the region it's in. But the easiest one I ever did, which I don't really even count it, is the Kingsguard, which is just a plain white shield. It's literally just me tracing the stencil on a piece of paper, cutting it out, gluing it down, tacking it to the wall, and moving on to the next one. But if you're actually talking about a banner where I actually had to color something, I can't remember the name of. It's been a while since I've looked that one up. It's not Riesling. Getting those toes there. I'm starting to feel it in my wrist too. It's kind of weird. I've discovered that coloring really activates like a different set of muscles in your hands and wrists than like writing does. Like if I journal longhand, I realize like it's a lot of like quick, sudden changes in direction of my hand, whereas coloring is just more like a fluid pattern. And so I can probably write for about 20 minutes before I start to feel like some carpal tunnel starting to activate. The coloring, I can do it for hours before it really starts to bother me. Ooh, all right. So yeah, nice fine point. We're gonna get those corners. The next banner that I want to do for you guys is Lannister, just because, you can't really have the Starks without the Lannisters. In terms of the story that we all know and love, they're just too incompatible. It's kind of like they're actually the two families, Stark and Lannister, are based on York and Lancaster are the two families involved in England's Civil War, known as the War of the Roses. And so you can't really discuss history without, you can't discuss one family without discussing the other. And same goes with Starks and Lannisters. That one will be using the two colors for that are Crimson Red and Metallic Gold. And Metallic Gold is a very interesting color to use, along with I consider them brothers, or maybe they're sisters. I don't know. Maybe they're siblings. Let's say that. They're very temperamental in the exact same way. They have their own little personalities. They're very different from all the other colored pencils. And so it'll be kind of exciting to show you how I work with gold color. Crimson is a crimson colored pencil. That's a beautiful Prismacolor pencil to use. It's one I really like using too. Pretty much all the reds are spot on. There's no impurities. The color is nice and balanced. And so I think I have probably a lot more. I think there's off the top of my head, I can think of a lot more stories about the Lannister family that's just way more interesting than the Starks. Or at least the ones I have found it more interesting. But I'll discuss more of those when we get to that banner. Alright, so when I get done with coloring this, I'm going to turn the overhead light off, go over any final spots that I missed. Alright, let's turn that off, and that is banging. That is definitely banging. So I think what I'm going to do is just go over it. Just really go over it one more time, like the major areas. You're just kind of like the larger areas with no detail, and just kind of match it. Get to kind of, so it's pretty much completely covered, but there's some areas that are probably covered a little darker than others. And so all I'm doing is just kind of going over, just kind of like going over spot checking it, quickly going over these areas and blending them in. Get a nice, solid direwolf gray. And it's warm enough out that I can just go right outside, probably almost without a jacket, and spray it down with the, it's a Krylon clear coat spray, and I use that to keep it from smudging and keep it from yellowing. Although with the white colored pencil for a background, I don't think the Krylon will be as necessary as it was before, but I just like spraying it with to give it a little bit of protection. When I used before I switched over to pigment pens, which are waterproof, the spray that I would use, I was using Sharpie pens, and those are not waterproof at all. So when I would spray them, if I got too close, sometimes like the paper would get wet, and the Sharpie pen would just bleed like crazy. And there was that Ambrose, the one with the ants. I actually did two. I did two of those, and one of them I did with Sharpie. And I remember it took me I think it took like 6 or 8 hours to complete that one. And when I finally got done with it, I sprayed it, and the bottom of it got just wet from the spray, and some of the ants started to just get all fuzzy, and the lines started to just bleed into the page, and my heart just sank when I saw that. I was like, no, my work. But it was a sharp. I had later replaced all the Sharpie drawings with pigment just to make them look neater. So it would have gotten replaced anyway. Yeah, every F up tends to be like a lesson learned. So it's never, there's never any, there's never not value in screwing up. There's always something you can learn from it, and you can really learn a lot more from your screw ups than your successes. In fact, if you're not screwing up for a while, you're probably not trying. Okay. So now I'm going to go over with a cotton swab. And this one I'm just going over the lines. I'm just going to press inward over the same color gray. Really get all just that excess wax off. And when you go, once you kind of go over this once, once you go over it once with like cotton, especially like cotton swab, you can pretty much just go over it with a cotton ball afterwards. Most of the excess color is going to be removed. I like doing this just for precision. There's kind of an aesthetically pleasing feel to it. In fact, like the cotton was part of the thing that kind of gave me the idea for an ASMR, because I'm like, I imagine this would be kind of a trigger, watching someone rub a cotton swab over the colored pencil. That's 7. Ooh. I almost grabbed the wrong color gray, and that would have been not a complete disaster, but it would have been unfortunate. It's always one thing to be careful about if you're going over something and you've set your color down. Make sure it's the right one. So I've done that where I start coloring something and I'm like, wait a minute. This red is a different red than I was using. For the most part, all you got to do is just kind of like erase the little area that you did. And if it's the same type of color, if it's like, they're both red but they're just different types of red, all you got to do is erase one and then just color over it with the new one, and it just kind of blends together, so it's not a really big deal. If I use 70, I almost grabbed 70% Cool Grey instead of 30%. So let's see if there's any more areas around the border too. Maybe here a little bit. Maybe along the legs. And here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is take a cotton ball. I'm going to get a clean one actually. Off the rest of it. Go with the pattern, the coloring pattern I used. And the reason, sometimes for a lot of banners, I would try to stay with the up and down pattern pretty consistently. But because it's fur and because there's a lot of patterns going this way, it was just easier. I think maybe in the past I would have probably colored like up and down, then colored around the pattern, and then just used up and down for the middle areas. But it was just, I just kind of learned like just kind of go in the same direction. When you have a situation like that, just do it the same direction, and it'll kind of make it look better, and the color pattern will kind of match the fur. Alright. So now we have a couple things left to do before we are done. I still have to do the nose, and I still have to do the teeth. The teeth, I don't want to do yellow. And actually, this is one of my favorites. This is actually one of my favorite colors too. Cream. It's basically, for me, it's kind of like an off-white, and I find a lot of opportunities to use it. But because we're coloring in the teeth, and because those teeth are just so thin and small, we're gonna have to get a nice, really sharp point for that. Oh yeah, look at that. That is about as sexy as you can get it. When something this sharp, it will break almost immediately when it touches the page, but that's pretty much to be expected. So I'm gonna start in the. Well, I was gonna like. There we go. You almost don't. Yeah. It's not breaking, but it's also because I'm not putting like any pressure on the pencil whatsoever. I think cream's actually a good color to use. It gives it kind of a yellowish hue to the teeth, but at the same time doesn't make it like too yellow. And also doesn't, and if it was just white, it's like, oh, I mean, teeth are not naturally white. And that goes for, non-humans as well. So that looks pretty good. Just wipe off the little excess. Just a little excess cream. And then finally, last little bit, I'm going to use that 70% Cool Grey that I chose not to do with this for the coat. Get a nice dark nose. All right, doesn't need to be too sharp. It's a little circle. So all we're gonna do is just fill it in quick. Wipe that down, and then we are done. Oh yeah. Beautiful. Take one final cotton swab. Just go over it one last time. Get all. And as you can see, there is no residue on the cotton swab at all, just because all the loose pencil bit shavings and pencil dust has been removed from the first pass of cotton swabs. So I'm going to go a little bit more firm, just to get that excess, just to get that like kind of wax off that doesn't necessarily have like a color to it. Let me know what you think of the cotton swab and the cotton balls. Oh yeah. This is coming out to a very bright shine, which is hard to see on camera, but kind of see off the reflection off the light. So yeah, you can definitely tell where the paper, where the colored pencil ends and the paper begins, because the paper is just going to have that dullness to it, whereas there's almost like a mirror finish. You can almost see like the edge of the edge of the light pad in it. So the next step is to spray it and then cut it out and mount it onto poster board.